It's Tristan Thompson time. That's right, we're talking cheat meals today, and I've got a fantastic cheat meal because it is Cheeseburger Week here in Pasadena, California. Now, I don't live in Pasadena, California, but I want to celebrate as if I do. And we're going to be making an Oklahoma burger today. We're going to be grinding up our own brisket, smashing our own burger with some onions, and assembling it together. And remember, it's a cheat meal, not a cheat day. We're not going full Tristan Thompson here. For this recipe, I'm grinding up an 11-pound brisket. If you don't have access to brisket or meat grinder, you can absolutely just use some 80-20 ground beef. It's totally fine. But nothing is tastier than freshly ground meat, and you can experiment with blends and all that. I'm pretty much using all of this brisket minus a few parts like this fat vein, which is pretty hard, and I'll cut out any gray parts. Those parts are actually fine to eat. It just gets gray from the cleaning process before they package it, but I don't feel like having any gray in my grind, so I'm losing it. Then I'll cut the entire brisket into strips small enough to fit into my grinder. You may have to get a little creative here depending on the size of your grinder, but it doesn't have to be pretty. I'm using a KitchenAid stand mixer attachment for grinding meat. As I'll always mention, getting a stand mixer is one of the most versatile items you can have. I put the actual grinder parts in the freezer for a few hours because we want this nice and cold during the process. As the meat warms up, that fat will start to soften and not grind as easily. So I try to do everything quickly out of the fridge and the freezer. From here, I'm going to do 2 grinds. An initial coarse grind, as you can see from the texture here. You don't have to grind it twice. You could do it once and go right to patties, but I want a finer texture, and I plan to freeze what I don't use today and save it for recipes like chili and tacos. After our first grind, I'll give everything a good hand mix and then switch the die to a finer grind and run everything through again. And voila, you've got yourself your very own fresh ground meat. And as I mentioned before, you can do blends with some chuck roast, some steak, whatever your heart desires. I'm going to put 1-pound portions into some freezer bags so that way I can pull them out when I need and have ground brisket for days. I'm going to save about 2 pounds for this recipe. These are very simple burgers to make. I'll measure out 3-ounce portions of ground meat and then ball it up and place it on a sheet. I'm doubling up these patties today. Once I've got everything measured out, I'll pop these into the fridge while I work on the onions. An Oklahoma burger has to have onions, and not just any presentation of onions. It's got to be the thinnest sliced onions you can possibly do. Now, this would be amazingly thin, almost see-through, if I had a mandolin, but I don't. And if you don't, it's all good. Just get your sharpest knife out the drawer and very carefully slice your onions. If you do have a mandolin, be very careful because those things can cut a fingertip off if you're not careful. I know I said I like to drink when I cook, but if I was using one of those, I'd wait till after to pour up. Anyway, a whole white onion sliced as thin as possible. Then once you've got everything sliced up, place it in a bowl and pour a couple pinches of salt onto the onions. This will begin drawing out the moisture in the onions, which will help them cook faster. Give the onions about 20 minutes, which is the perfect time to get your grill fired up. After 20 minutes, just give the onions a squeeze and transfer to a dry bowl or container. You can see all that liquid we left behind. Now that we have our onions cut, the rest is simple. Get your grill fired up to about 500 degrees or as close to it as you can. I've placed a cast iron griddle on here over direct fire and let it preheat for about 30 minutes. You can also use a cast iron skillet if you have it, you just need it piping hot. I'll place some beef tallow on the cast iron, but feel free to just use vegetable oil if you have it. I'll place my meat down, drop a bunch of onions on it, and then proceed to smash. I like using this bacon press, but you could also just use 2 spatulas or even another pan. Just make sure it's clean. Hold down for about 30 seconds and then lift up. Sprinkle with some of your favorite burger seasoning on there. I'm using this Cattleman's California tri-tip seasoning. I'll do the second patty the same way: meat, onions, smash, season. I'll take a peek and see if the bottom of the burger has formed a crust, and once it has, I will flip. See all that brown there? That's exactly what we want, and we achieve that with the hot cast iron and the pressure applied from our spatula or bacon press. Now I'll add some more seasoning and slices of cheese to each. I'm using American cheese, but feel free to use cheddar or whatever you want. A few seconds for the underside to cook. We can toast our buns at this point as well. And then we build our burger, a patty on top of another patty. Continue this process until you're done with all your patties, and keep in mind to move quickly because as your burger meat comes up to room temp, as it sits out in the sun or wherever it is, waiting to be cooked, it may begin sticking to your smashing instruments. Just a little heads up. And that's it, a delicious Oklahoma smash burger. If you want, you can add your favorite condiments or some bacon. It's now your creation. Enjoy this cheat meal, and I'll see you all here again next week.